program that fits you with the aviation general knowledge that you need to know about the aviation industry. Talk to Aviation Experts comes to you every Saturday at 3 p.m. on air and online, only on iRadio, your eye on South Sudan. Fly Ontime Aviation Science Academy, where the journey starts.
Yes, good evening to you who is listening and also watching us live on our Facebook page, and welcome to Talk to Aviation Expert program right here on iRadio, your eye on South Sudan. My name is Baria Johnson, and this program usually comes to you every Saturday from 3 to 4 p.m. Today happens to be the 3rd of February, 2024. Happy new month to you who is listening and also watching us on Facebook. This program, it is brought to you by Fly Ontime Aviation Sciences Academy. Well, now you can take IATA courses at Fly Ontime Aviation Sciences Academy, which is located next to Mobile Roundabout inside Techno Building, the 3rd floor. Well, in today's edition of this very program, we'll be discussing a different topic. It's also an interesting topic, and we'll be looking at the survival factors in aviation cabin safety. Of course, to have more information or to get more info about the topic of the day, in the studio we have Barry Liman. He is an approved IATA cabin crew instructor at Fly Ontime Aviation Sciences Academy. Barry also happens to be the general manager of Ontime Aviation Services here in Juba. Yes, Barry, good evening and welcome on board.
Good evening, Baria. Thanks so much. Happy New Month to you and to all your listeners.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, if you are listening to us and you're also following the program on Facebook, you can drop your comments and questions concerning the topic of today later on in the comments section, and you can also tell us where you are watching us from. لكل زول بيسمع لآي راديو في زمن ده، أنا برحب بكم في برنامج يتكلم مع خبراء الطيران اللي بيجيكم كل يوم السبت من الساعة 3 لحد الساعة 4 معي أنا باريا جونسون. وبرنامج ده بيجيكم من أكاديمية بتاعة Fly Ontime Aviation Sciences Academy. الأكاديمية ده في جوبا هنا، هو قريب مع صينية بتاعة موبيل جوا عمارة بتاعة تكنو في الدور الثالث. ممكن تمشي هناك وتلقى هم عندهم آيات كورسز، ممكن تمشي هناك وتسأل كتير عن الكورسز اللي هم قاعدين يدوا هناك. في حلقة بتاعة الليلة من برنامج ده نحن ماشيين نتكلم عن عوامل بتاعة البقاء في سلامة بتاعة مقطورة بتاعة الطيران. انت لما تكون في الطيارة انت بتشوف المضيفين بيكونوا عندهم محل معين بيمشوا فيه وبيكونوا قاعدين فيه، ونحن هنتكلم عن عوامل بتاعة السلامة في محل ده. Yes, Barry, as we go straight to our topic of discussion, of course, what are the main survival factors in aviation cabin safety?
Okay. Thank you, Baria, for the opportunity to once again come to the studio and just talk about safety, specifically cabin safety.
Yes.
I think it would be very important if I initially just talk about what are the regulations surrounding cabin safety.
Yes.
Because you can't talk about survival factors without talking about cabin safety, and you can't really talk about cabin safety without talking about the overarching regulators that govern us. So first and foremost, ICAO. ICAO is an international civil aviation organization. They are a UN specialized body that governs civil aviation globally. Now, ICAO has documented what are called standards and recommended practices, specifically in documents called annexes. And those annexes run from Annex number 1 all the way to Annex number 19.
Okay.
Now, specific to our purpose, which is survival factors in cabin safety, some of those annexes specifically touch on cabin crew safety. As an example, Annex 6, which is operations of aircraft, Part 1, international commercial flights, highlights aspects of passenger safety, carry-on baggage, training, equipment within that aircraft, fatigue management, and many or more aspects, security and all that.
Yes.
So by the time it trickles down to the local CAA, which is the Civil Aviation Authority, and then, of course, from the CAA to the airline, then they can document their manual on cabin safety as well. Then you have Annex 8 as another example, airworthiness, where we have also documented aircraft design among other aspects of safety. Yeah. Annex 12 on search and rescue is a very important annex. We are talking about survival factors, where ICAO has documented requirements for the state in case of an emergency, an aircraft has crash landed or ditched. Who is responsible for the search and rescue, and how are they supposed to conduct that search and rescue?
Yes.
Of course, we have regulations from Annex 13, which is aircraft accident and incident investigation. While it may sound reactive in the sense you're investigating something that has already happened, those investigations are key to ensure that future similar issues don't reoccur.
Yes.
And then, of course, you have your Annex 19, which is the safety management systems that also documents hazard risks and how to manage those hazards and risks in aviation, and for our purpose, cabin safety as well.
Yes.
You have institutions like IATA, which are best practice institutions. Those kinds of institutions have also documented and are also championing cabin safety as well. They have groups like Cabin Operations Safety Task Force, which is in charge of researching and documenting best practice in cabin safety, including survival factors, and they share this with organizations and industries at large. So that is a typical background as to how can you call it? Cabin safety and survival factors. Now, to go back to your question, which was some of the survival factors items within cabin safety, I will list them, and then I'm sure within the questions that will be coming up, we will expand on this. They include training. And training is an important aspect of survival factors. Your cabin crew need to be able to be trained and be able to implement that training in case of an emergency for us to improve the survival factors within the cabin. You have cabin equipment, which not only have to be available but also serviceable and accessible within that aircraft. You have aircraft design, where in terms of aircraft design, it's been designed in such a way that in requirement of rapid evacuation, the cabin crew member is able to do that effectively. You have cabin factors like communication and coordination. All those are survival factors. You have external factors like coordination among the authorities. So the search and rescue team. Those also improve emergencies survival factors. The doors, which are the exits, are they usable? Are they blocked? Are they obstructed? Is there smoke in the cabin while the evacuation is taking place? Those are just to mention a few survival factors items that they exist in cabin safety.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Barry. You talked about training. So how important is proper emergency training for cabin crew members? How important is it in aviation?
Very, very important. Very, very important. Remember, the evacuation procedures will be based on some type of knowledge that this crew member has. This crew member acquire that knowledge through training. This training for aviation industry is regulated. So even what they are being taught has been passed on to them in terms of SOPs from the company's manual. The company has picked that from their CAA that requires when you're doing your training, certain items have to be picked up. And of course, your CAA has pulled that from the ICAO documents, and essentially they are complying with that. Now, training includes important aspects like how do you evacuate that aircraft and for how long should you be evacuating that aircraft. Training includes things like if you have medical emergencies, how do you handle them? Training includes things like how do I communicate to that passenger during evacuation? How do they know that they need to come to my exit and not use any other exit? Training also includes cabin crew awareness in terms of what is normal, what is not normal. How can you use your judgment in certain cases? Because in certain cases, things will not be straightforward. In certain cases, the aircraft doesn't touch down on crash landing and it is intact, probably disintegrated. Then how do you implement that evacuation.
Yes.
So training is important for cabin crew. Training is a regulatory requirement. Safety and emergency procedures training. Typically every year you need to go and retrain, and you need to present your license to the CAA so that they can validate that you've been trained.
Okay. All right. Still on evacuation, as you mentioned earlier. So what measures are in place to ensure a quick and efficient evacuation in case of an emergency in the cabin?
Okay. So the measures that have been put in place to ensure quick and efficient evacuation, number one, there's a requirement for you to have what is called a minimum crew on board. Now that minimum crew varies based on the aircraft type.
Okay,
Yeah,
yes.
good. I can see you've been following the training. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Good job. Yeah, the aircraft type. Yeah, so typically a small aircraft, say 737, which is a narrow body aircraft, you'd have all main doors, and those main doors are 4 on a dash 300, for example.
Yeah.
So for some airlines, that would be like a minimum crew. Yeah, on a bigger aircraft, 787, which has 8 emergency exits, you'd have all those manned as well. Yeah, so those are some of the things that you put in place to ensure that the aircraft is actually able to be evacuated in good time. Access to how do you call it? Emergency equipment. Yeah, for instance, firefighting equipment. You may want to fight a fire so that the passengers may be able to access a particular door, for example. Yeah. So those are some of the things that can be put in place.
Yes. Okay. And how do emergency exits and evacuation slides contribute to survival factors in aviation cabin safety?
Okay. Doors the exits are a big thing. They're also called doors. So it's your way in and your way out.
Yes.
In normal situations, in abnormal situations. The doors are equipped with what is called a slide, and that slide can be used when you crash on land as a sliding device for quick disembarkation. And in certain aircraft, they can be used as a flotation device when you land on water, so passengers can essentially float on water on the raft, on the slide.
Okay.
Yeah. The exits also have to be usable in the sense they are not obstructed. You can have an emergency where the door is obstructed maybe by fire or obstructed, you've landed in water, and that part of the exit is underwater. So you cannot use that door. So the crew have also been trained to be able to check, is my door usable? Is my door obstructed? So that they can redirect passengers to an opposite door.
Yes. Okay, let's also look at the main risks and hazards that passengers and crew could face during a flight. If you can state to us that briefly.
Okay. Now, in aviation, we typically fly in an environment where you have risks. Yeah, and of course you can't have risks without hazards. Yeah, and those risks are normally managed to what we normally call acceptable levels.
Yes.
Yeah. Details of this concepts can be found in Annex 19, which I earlier alluded to.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, a hazard is any object or situation that can cause harm to a person or damage to property. And for us, when we talk about property, we're talking about that aircraft as an example.
Yes.
And a risk is any time you have a likelihood of a harm or a damage taking place. And if it does take place, how severely is it? Yeah, and that severity can range anything from negligible all the way to you've lost an aircraft, catastrophic, or fatalities, people have passed away.
Yes.
Now, some of those hazards that are there within the aviation industry include things like bad weather, severe weather, like turbulence. Yeah, there have been cases where turbulent situations have led to aircraft crashes. You have things like birds and wildlife Yeah, there have been situations where birds on the runway, while an aircraft is taking off, have been sucked into the engine and you've lost your engines, leading to crashes. You have things like fires on board. Yeah. Now, in an aircraft, unlike a ground situation, when you have that fire, your passengers or crew don't have the luxury of saying, I can leave. You have to fight that fire on board, so it's a risk that they are taking. And of course, mitigation has been put in place to ensure that that risk is contained. You have systems that are being monitored. You have equipment in case it does occur, like firefighting equipment, where a crew can actually fight those fires. So risks are inherently there in the aviation industries. Crew are trained to handle those risks and to identify those hazards so that they can do something before they develop into occurrences, incidents or accidents.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Barry. If you have just tuned in or you are just watching us live on Facebook, you are listening to Talk to Aviation Expert program right here on iRadio, your eye on South Sudan. And this program usually comes to you every Saturday from 3 to 4 p.m. It's brought to you by Ontime Aviation Sciences Academy. You can also take IATA courses at Ontime Aviation Sciences Academy, which is located next to Mobile Roundabout inside Techno Building, the 3rd floor. Today we are discussing about survival factors in aviation cabin safety, and in the studio we have Barry Liman. He is an approved IATA cabin crew instructor at Ontime, and he also happens to be the general manager of Ontime Aviation Services. So if you have any questions concerning the topic, you can drop your questions on the Facebook Live in the comment section. And to those who are listening to us, if you have any questions or comments on the topic, you can call us on our studio lines later on. Yes, Barry, what safety equipment is available on board to aid passengers in case of an emergency?
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
We have many safety equipment here. As an example, you have firefighting equipment, fire extinguishers, and various kinds of fire extinguishers that you find on board.
Yes.
For fighting fire, crew are trained on how to use it, both in the cabin. So the cabin is a section where the passengers sit, and you have similar in the flight deck, and the flight deck is where you have your pilots sitting. You have equipment like life jackets, and the life jackets are accessible both to passengers and crew. Typically for passengers under your seat, but I recommend when the cabin crew are making the announcement, listen so that they can tell you exactly where they are, because different airlines might place them different places.
Yes.
You have equipment like smoke hoods. A smoke hood is what you don on your head when you're fighting a fire, so that the smoke cannot overwhelm you while you're on board that aircraft or while you're fighting that fire.
Yes.
You have equipment, extension seat belts, that if you're carrying a baby, you can extend that to your child. You have oxygen masks, which are also on board. You have life rafts. A life raft is a device that can float on water, separate from a slide. So life raft, when you're landing on water, which is called a ditching, it's typically removed, thrown on water, and when it's activated, it's a flotation device where passengers can now go in and they can be safe in there.
Yes.
So those are some of the equipment that you can find on board available, and they can drastically enhance survival factors within the aircraft.
Okay. And also, how do cabin crew members ensure that passengers remain calm and follow safety instructions during an emergency situation? Of course, we panic when there is an emergency situation. So how will they ensure that the passengers are calm and they follow these safety instructions?
Okay. Anyone who is human will probably be worried if you have an emergency situation.
Yes.
Yeah. It is normal. But our work as cabin crew members is from the word go, even before you are aware there's going to be an emergency on your flight, prepare the passengers. Remember, the more aware you are about the safety features within the aircraft, the more likely you'll be relaxed, and the more likely you'll be relaxed during an emergency, the better you're going to behave when it actually happens. So briefing is very important. The crew brief their passengers. It's important, especially for certain key passengers that will be used to assist you, called ABPs, able boarding persons, that you talk to them, you brief them, and you find out from them if they are willing and able to assist you during that emergency. This communication, very important, has to be there. There are two kinds of emergencies. You have a pre-planned emergency where you know you've lost engines, as an example, and you are definitely going to have an emergency landing, and you have time to prepare the passengers. Then the cabin crew will go through the paces in helping the passengers to prepare. But you have certain emergencies where they are totally unplanned. You are coming to land normal, something happens, and then you crash land, and of course you do not have time to make that preparation. So if you do have time, then what you can also do to help passengers just calm down and cooperate with you is prepare them as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, a cabin crew in an emergency situation has to be assertive, has to be in charge. I have to be seen like I know what I am doing. So during that actual evacuation, you are trained to have a call to action emergency command systems.
Yes.
Yeah. You are calling the passenger evacuations, come this way. If your exit is blocked, very assertively let them know, exit blocked, use the opposite exit.
Yes.
It has to come out very assertively, very strongly, so that the passengers can be very confident you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So in terms of communication, it starts from the word go, but it also has to come out very assertively, very confidently when you're talking about it.
Okay, we are actually moving to communication. You mentioned at the beginning that communication is one of the main survival factors in aviation cabin safety. So what is the significance of crew coordination and communication in ensuring survival factors in aviation cabin safety?
Okay. So what we communicate? We communicate cabin safety messages. So the pre-flight briefings that we've talked about before. We communicate actions that we'll be expecting from the passengers. So let's say you have a pre-planned emergency and you're telling them just before landing you will hear the captain say, brace for impact, and this is what you will do when you hear brace for impact. You'll be given an instruction. Yeah, different airlines have different procedures concerning how you brace. It's important you listen and you pick out exactly what that is.
Yeah.
Communication is important. As a cabin crew member, again, when the passengers are evacuating, remember there are some who are waiting to hear some type of direction and guidance. Very strongly, come this way, come this way, come this way. Yeah, jump, slide, run away, jump, slide, run away. Communication very key. Communication between the cabin crew member who is giving information about what is happening in the cabin and the flight deck to the pilot. Also another important component. Now, what we normally call crew encapsulates pilots, cabin crew members on board that aircraft. The captain has his role to play, the first officer has his role to play. The senior flight attendant or the flight purser or the lead cabin attendant on the aircraft, depending on what you call them in an airline, has a role to play. And the other cabin crew members also have a role to play. So in terms of coordination, yeah, as a flight purser or the lead cabin attendant in that aircraft, you need to be able to pass critical information that the pilots require on board that flight during that period. Okay, you need to be able to clearly communicate what you need to communicate to your cabin crew members as to how you are expecting them to handle that emergency. The cabin crew members who've been given various roles need to be able to carry out those roles as they are supposed to be carried out. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a fire in the cabin. The cabin crew are preparing their meal and the oven was on fire. The cabin crew don't start thinking about it then, about what they're supposed to do. The drill is always pre-planned, even during your training, that the first person who found that fire is supposed to fight that fire. They know what to do. They'll switch off the circuit breakers, they'll pick their equipment, they'll start fighting the fire. Somebody else clearly is aware about what they're supposed to do when they see that fire being fought. Yeah, go to the flight deck, communicate what is happening at the back, nature of the smoke, how thick, what is being done about it. There's another crew member who is also aware about their role during that time.
Yes.
They will keep on replenishing you with other equipment. And of course, we'll have crew members who are letting the passenger just calm down and containing the situation at that time. So coordination is based on the roles that each cabin crew member is playing within that aircraft.
Yes. Okay, thank you so much, Barry. Let's go for a short commercial break and then we'll come back and, of course, continue with our discussion of today.
Fly Ontime Aviation Science Academy presents to you Talk to Aviation Experts radio program, a program that fits you with the aviation general knowledge that you need to know about the aviation industry. Talk to Aviation Experts comes to you every Saturday at 3 p.m. on air and online, only on iRadio, your eye on South Sudan. Fly Ontime Aviation Science Academy, where the journey starts.
أكاديمية فلاي أون تايم لعلوم الطيران بيقدم لك البرنامج الإذاعي اتكلم مع خبراء الطيران. البرنامج ده بيزودك بكل المعلومات المهمة واللي انت بتحتاج تعرفه عن مجال الطيران. اتكلم مع خبراء الطيران بيجيكم كل يوم السبت الساعة 3 بالمساء على الهواء وعلى الإنترنت فقط على أي راديو. عينك على جنوب السودان. أكاديمية فلاي أون تايم لعلوم الطيران حيث تبدأ الرحلة.
Okay, welcome back from that short commercial break. And of course, you are listening to Talk to Aviation Expert radio program right here on iRadio, your eye on South Sudan. My name is Baria Johnson, and today happens to be the 3rd of February 2024. To you who is watching us on Facebook and listening to us, Happy New Month to you there. This program is brought to you by Fly Ontime Aviation Sciences Academy. And of course, you can take IATA courses at Fly Ontime Aviation Sciences Academy, which is located next to Mobile Roundabout inside Techno Building, the 3rd floor. Today we are talking about survival factors in aviation cabin safety, and we have Barry Liman, an approved IATA cabin crew instructor at Fly Ontime, and also the general manager of Ontime Aviation services here in Juba. لكل زول بيسمع لأي راديو أو لناس اللي بيشاهدوا لنا في صفحاتنا على الفيسبوك، إنت بتابع برنامج يتكلم مع خبراء الطيران، والليلة نحن بنتكلم عن عوامل البقاء في السلامة في مقطورة بتاعت الطيران. معنا في الاستديو كابين approved IATA cabin crew instructor بيري ليمان، وهو كمان المدير العام بتاع Ontime Aviation Services. لو انت عندك اي سؤال عن الموضوع بتاع الليله ممكن نديك فرصه بعدين عشان تتصل تليفون في ارقام حاجتنا في الاستديو، وانت لو بتشوف في فيسبوك ممكن تاخد سؤال بتاعك هناك ونحن حنقرا سؤال ده للضيف بتاعنا في الاستديو. Yes, Barry, also let's look at how are cabin crew trained to handle medical emergencies that may occur during a flight?
Okay. So medical emergencies can happen. Again, we are human beings. When you fly, you can be sick on board, or something critical can happen, bigger than sickness. Cabin crew are trained on various aspects of handling medical issues, like first aid. So you get a first aid training that equips you with knowledge to handle, can I call them small incidents?
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody has burnt themselves on board, can happen. You've cut yourself, can happen.
Yes.
Maybe you fainted, and that can happen. You have a long flight, 8-hour flight. You're in the cabin with so many people. You can't faint. Yeah, so cabin crew are trained to handle those kind of situations. They are also trained to handle critical situations. Somebody has passed out. Maybe they're experiencing a heart attack and all. You're trained to to do CPR as well. Within the aircraft also, we are trained to be able to recognize if a situation is beyond our capacity to handle, and know, okay, I need to call a doctor for this particular case.
Yes.
Yeah, where we usually page for a doctor, and the doctor can present themselves, and they can handle that situation as well.
Yes.
Yeah. For those kind of medical issues, we have equipment on board, so we have first aid kit, and that kit has everything we need in terms of medical supplies. These are clearly documented in Annex 6. a list of what is supposed to be there in your medical equipment, as well as your doctor's kit as well.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. All right. Our studio lines are 0922-986-986 or 0911-986-986 if you have any questions concerning survival factors in aviation cabin safety. We have a caller, iRadio. Hello, iRadio. Okay, if you're calling us, make sure you're a little bit far from your radio so that we can get your voice clear. 0922 or 0911-986-986. These are our numbers if you have a question on survival factors in aviation cabin safety. Yes, Barry, of course, in the beginning you talked about the aircraft type. Now, how does the design and layout of the cabin contribute to passenger safety in case of an emergency?
Okay, fantastic question. Very good. The designers of an aircraft cabin critically think about survivability in that cabin. So there are so many things within that cabin that have been designed with that in mind.
Yes.
Okay. Very interesting. Like for instance, did you know that the seat cushion, I'm not talking about the pillow, the cushion, like the one that's normally at the back of your head,
yes,
the one you can rip off, can actually float as well. Yes.
Okay, this is a new information I'm getting today.
Float as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Of course, this is not the primary flotation device. Your primary flotation device is your life jacket, and the cabin crew must communicate that in case of an emergency or a ditching, your life jacket is under your seat and how you're using it.
Yeah.
Now, another way how the cabin design has been done to facilitate chances of survival, you have two kinds of aircraft. You have narrow body, you have wide body. In your narrow body aircraft, of course, you have enough doors to handle that kind of small aircraft. In your wide body aircraft, you have enough doors to handle that kind of aircraft as well. And of course, you have two aisles as opposed to one aisle on the big aircraft.
Yes.
The equipment that we earlier talked about are also spread throughout that aircraft. So the design of the aircraft is such that every cabin crew member sitting at their station, they're able to access critical equipment, like your life jacket, your flashlight in case you land at night or crash at night.
Yes.
Yeah. Things like what is called smoke hood in case of fighting a fire. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Close to you, where in case of a fire you can quickly pick it, don it, and fight that fire. Fire extinguishers are spread throughout the aircraft. Yeah. Typically somewhere close to the galley, and the galley is what somebody would call a kitchen. In aircraft we call them galleys.
Okay.
Yeah. So spread out throughout the aircraft as well. So the equipment have been put, or rather strategically located in such a way that if you need them in terms of an emergency, you can quickly locate them. And the part of the cabin crew training is location of equipment. In the flight deck as well, you have similar equipment, and the pilots are also trained to know where those equipment are as well.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's move on to the challenges. What are the main challenges faced by cabin crew members when it comes to ensuring survival factors in aviation cabin safety?
Okay. Some challenges would include things you have no control over. Yeah, I'll give an example. The textbook crash would be you crash landed, the aircraft is intact, and everybody is cooperating with the briefing that you gave earlier. Okay, but there are certain times where there is smoke in the cabin. Okay, there is smoke in the cabin, in which case it makes it difficult for the passengers to evacuate, but also difficult for the crew to be able to marshal people out.
Yes.
Okay, to marshal people out. My sincere apologies.
Yeah, it's okay.
Marshal people out as well. Okay. And crew are able to assist passengers because during your training, you are trained on evacuation with smoke in the cabin, as an example.
Yes.
Okay. Now, passenger compliance is another issue.
Yes.
Okay. Again, somebody may be disoriented and they are not listening to your commands. Okay. There is a phenomenon that happens from time to time. I don't know if you've heard about it. Passengers disembark during evacuation and they disembark with their bags. So you see somebody carrying their luggage and they are going down the slide. It can happen as well.
Yeah.
The problem with that is this, that bag can perforate the slide, which makes it unusable for somebody who is still inside that aircraft.
Yes.
Yeah. So those are some of the challenges that are there. Your PA system could stop failing when you're on ground and then trying to communicate. Yeah, come this way, come with this way, and that kind of thing. So those are some of the challenges that the crew member can face in terms of evacuation.
Okay. Talking about passenger compliance, what role does a passenger cooperation play in enhancing the survival factors in aviation cabin safety?
A big role. Remember, it's a two-way traffic. You need me as a crew member to know what I'm doing and to communicate it, but I need you as a passenger to also trust I will be able to evacuate you out of that aircraft in good time.
Yes.
So the passengers need to remain calm and follow the instructions of the cabin crew. At that point of evacuation, I think the most important thing for you is to get out as fast as you can. Leave everything, and this is usually part of the briefing. Remove your shoes, leave everything behind. Leave everything behind. Your safety comes number one. So the passenger plays a key role.
Okay. All right. Also, Barry, if you can share with us some of the technological advancement being developed to enhance cabin survivability factors.
Okay. That's a good question.
Yes.
That's a good question. We have, of course, the invention of a slide raft.
Yes.
Okay. Like, for instance, on a big aircraft, the slide can actually have two rows as opposed to a smaller aircraft, which you have one row on it. That allows more people to evacuate from an aircraft. You have cabin interior equipment that are fireproofed. Okay, so they will reduce the likelihood of that aircraft burning faster or burning quicker. So those are some of the technology that is being introduced to improve. You have 16G seats, okay, where those seats are designed in such a way that on the crash landing you can be able to handle the impact of that particular aircraft. Okay, so that's an advancement that is there as well.
Okay. All right. And also, if you could provide insight into the standard equipment carried on commercial flights to address various in-flight emergencies, and how does the availability of the equipment contribute to cabin safety?
Okay, so apart from what I'd initially mentioned, like firefighting equipment, your raft, okay,
the smoke
hood and all that, you have something called an ELT, an emergency locator transmitter. This transmitter, when placed in water after landing, let's say you are ditching, okay, is able to transmit and allow authorities to locate where you are. So it essentially enhances or improves how fast help can get you on board. So these are important equipment. On an aircraft, you have emergency escape path lighting. Okay, So remember, when you crash lands, your lighting systems may go dark.
Yes.
Yeah. This light comes up inside the cabin and lights your path out of the aircraft. In fact, you are able to see it even when you have smoke within the cabin. Yeah. So these are some of other equipment within aircraft that can assist in evacuation.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Barry. Let's go for a short commercial break, and then when we get back, we will continue with our discussion. Our time is 40 minutes past the hour of 3.
أكاديمية فلاي أون تايم لعلوم الطيران بيقدم لك البرنامج الإذاعي اتكلم مع خبراء الطيران. البرنامج ده بيزودك بكل المعلومات المهمة واللي انت بتحتاج تعرفه عن مجال الطيران. اتكلم مع خبراء الطيران بيجيكم كل يوم السبت الساعة 3 بالمساء على الهواء وعلى الإنترنت فقط على أي راديو. عينك على جنوب السودان. أكاديمية فلاي أون تايم لعلوم الطيران حيث تبدأ الرحلة.
Fly Ontime Aviation Science Academy presents to you Talk to Aviation Experts radio program, a program that fits you with the aviation general knowledge that you need to know about the aviation industry. Talk to Aviation Experts comes to you every Saturday at 3 p.m. on air and online, only on iRadio, your eye on South Sudan. Fly Ontime Aviation Science Academy, where the journey starts.
Okay, welcome back from that short commercial break. You are listening to iRadio, your eye on South Sudan, and this is Talk to Aviation Expert program. Well, this program comes to you every Saturday from 3 to 4 p.m. My name is Baria Johnson, and in today's edition of the program, we're looking at the survival factors in aviation cabin safety. This very program is also brought to you by Fly Ontime Aviation Sciences Academy. You can take IATA courses at Fly Ontime Aviation Sciences Academy, which is located next to Mobile Roundabout inside Techno Building, the third floor. And in the studio we have Barry Liman. He is an approved IATA cabin crew instructor at Fly Ontime Aviation Sciences Academy, and he also happens to be the general manager of Ontime Aviation Services. To you who have been following the show, if you have any questions or comments to Barry in the studio, you can call us on 0922 or 0911 986 986. iRadio. Hello, iRadio. Okay, you can still call us back on the same numbers, 0911 986 986 or 0922 986 986. And to you who's watching us on Facebook, you can drop your comments and questions right there. Okay, Barry, we talked about like the layout or the design of the cabin. In what ways does modern cabin design prioritize the safety and survivability of passengers and crew during emergency scenarios?
Okay. Modern cabin design.
Yeah. Before you answer that, let's pick this call. iRadio.
Hello?
Yes, iRadio. Okay, you can call us back on the same number, 0911 986 986 or 0922 986 986. And of course, you can ask your questions and drop as well your comments concerning the topic of today. Yes, Barry.
Okay. So the cabin predominantly is designed with safety in mind as number one. Of course, there's the comfort bit of it, yeah, but with safety in mind as a priority. If you've noticed, like for example, when you board an aircraft, there's usually nothing at the door.
Yes.
When you get in, then somehow by the time you're taking off, a cabin crew member is sitting there, and you're wondering where the chair came from.
Yes.
Yeah. So they're essentially jump seats. Yeah, and it's a jump seat for a reason. So that when somebody stands up from it, it pulls back into itself. So when people are either leaving the aircraft or evacuating, you don't have an obstruction at the door.
Yes.
Where you have your overwing exits, as an example, the seat in front has been designed in such a way that it doesn't recline back. And it doesn't recline back for a reason. We don't want, when somebody is evacuating through that exit or the overwing exit, there's an obstruction of the backrest laying behind them. Yeah.
Okay.
So that is very, very intentional on that aircraft. It's not a mistake. Yeah. Now, typically on those exits as well, there is more room in terms of gap between where you're sitting and the seat in front to allow spacing when you're evacuating through that door.
Yes.
Yeah. Most passengers book that seat because it has more leg room, but we really want you to book that seat and be aware that I will come to you and request that in case of an emergency, would you be willing to assist on this?
Okay.
When you're flying in places where you're flying over water, there are certain locations within the aircraft that have been earmarked for the life raft to be placed, typically closer to the doors. So passengers, at times they may have an issue, why is the life raft where my bag is supposed to be? But the design of the aircraft is such that that is the place that that life raft needs to be. Yeah. Now, certain aircraft, have a specific place for the raft. So it's not where the bags are supposed to be. And if you see where they are located, the designer of the aircraft had this in mind, that in case of an emergency, I want it to be quickly retrieved and you are closer to the door than putting the raft at the center.
Yes.
So those are some of the things that are in place to ensure that safety is prioritized when it comes to the cabin layout arrangement.
Okay, all right. Let's go through some of the comments and questions on our Facebook page. We have James Juma Alfred. I'm James Juma from High Seminary, Juba. Thanks, Barry, and the host, Mrs. Johnson, for the wonderful elaboration and expertise on the survival factors in aviation cabin safety. My questions are, where are the floating equipment placed in the aircraft? He also has another question. Why are the emergency exit seats are charged more fare in other aircraft? For the case of South Sudan, those small aircraft, usually there are no safety briefing. How do you look into that matter? He also has another question. Are all the aircrafts in South Sudan meeting the required standard as per international requirements? Thank you for the nice and wonderful topic. He also has another question. Why are the cabin crew usually asks the windows to be open while landing, especially? Okay, let's maybe take them one by one. The first question on where are the floating equipment placed in the aircraft?
Okay, so the caller has asked very, very good questions.
Yes.
Very good questions. Now, what is a flotation device? A flotation device is any of those equipment that will allow you to enter the water and actually float when you have an incident. Now, depending on the airline SOPs, which is standard operating procedures, there are certain flotation devices that will not be put on that aircraft if you're not flying over water. Typically, what you must have on those aircraft are life vests. And those life vests are usually also stored under your seat. But I highly recommend, when you're traveling as a passenger, listen to the cabin crew instructions.
Yes.
Because some airlines will not have put them under the seats, but maybe to the side of the seat, depending on how that seat design is done. So listen to the instructions. They will tell you where those devices are. Now, what is another flotation device? You have the life raft. The life raft are stored strategically on board, and the crew member must be able to know the location of the raft, and they typically do because they are trained on this. So those are the kind of two flotation devices that are designed for flotation.
Yes.
Then you have the slides, which can also float, and the slides are exposed when you open that door in armed condition. And they can be, depending on the aircraft, they can be able to carry a certain number of passengers, and the crew will be able to manage those numbers on board.
Okay. All right. And he also asked about why are the emergency exit seats charged more in other aircraft?
To be honest, I may not be able to talk about the cost of the exits. Okay, from a commercial standpoint, you would need to reach out to the airline that charges. I'm not aware about any charges being levied on an exit, but for my purpose, which is cabin safety, I know the person who needs to be there must be able to handle the responsibilities that come with sitting on the exit. For instance, I will not accept a child to sit on the overwing exit because in case of an emergency, they may not be able to open that door. You cannot allow somebody who is sick. You cannot even allow somebody who is able-bodied, but when you talk to them, they say, no, I don't want this responsibility.
Yeah.
So from a safety perspective, we are looking at safety and not the commercial aspect that seat was sold or not.
Okay. All right. And also he says, his third question, and for the case of South Sudan, the small aircraft, usually there is no safety briefing. How do you look into the matter?
I started by saying cabin safety is regulated by ICAO, and ICAO has cascaded standards and recommended practices to the state through the CAA. So the local CAA has cascaded standards and recommended practices, compliance items to the airlines that operate locally. As a cabin crew member, when I'm flying an aircraft, whether it is in South Sudan, Kenya, or whichever other country that I'm flying, I must provide cabin safety messages. It is not coming from the CAA, so to speak, but it is a requirement that is an international requirement. So I may not be able to speak on behalf of those other airlines, but just to help the caller understand, it has nothing to do with a particular airline, but it is a requirement that those briefings are actually done. Okay.
And his last question was, why are the cabin crew usually, they sask the windows to be open while landing, especially?
Okay. So this is a very good question.
Yeah.
This is somebody who has flown before and he's observant. Okay. Now, remember, there was a presentation during this talk show, and a colleague in the industry said there are two phases where you're most likely to have an accident. Okay. So, Baria, what are those two phases of flight?
Okay, I may not remember immediately.
Landing and
takeoff.
Fantastic.
Yes.
You see, you can remember those.
Yes.
Yeah? Landing and takeoff. Now, especially when you are landing at night, okay, you want to be able to have situational awareness, that you are able to scan your environment. If the window shades are closed and you've crash landed, God forbid, you may not be able to familiarize yourself with what is happening on the outside. Okay, so the crew member normally go around to ask all passengers, pull up your window shades. Pull up your window shades. That is one thing they normally do. The next thing they normally do is they dim the lights. Why? If they leave the lights on, okay, and you have an emergency, then you will be disoriented because you are coming from a place where there's so much light into the darkness. You will not be able to see. Okay. So the simple reason is I want you to be able to see your outside environment in case of an emergency and you are on ground.
Okay, thank you so much. And James Juma, I hope Baria answered all your questions. We are 53 minutes after the hour of 3. We are left with few minutes to be concluding with this program. Baria, I'll give you this chance to share your last message on survival factors in aviation cabin safety.
Okay, so first and foremost, our passengers, our travelers, our guests need to be able to rest assured while they're inside the aircraft, they are being taken care of by pilots and crew who are well trained.
Yes.
Their training is not just in-house in the sense where an airline would pick and choose what they are training, but there is an oversight system that is international, and this oversight system ensures that the training they're being given meets the requirements.
Okay.
They need to comply with the cabin crew instructions. Trust that when I'm asking you to pay attention to the briefing, there's a reason for that.
Yes.
So every passenger needs to pay attention to those briefings.
Yeah.
In the unlikely event you actually have an emergency situation, again, listen to the cabin crew guidance and instructions. They are there to help you quickly and effectively egress or exit that aircraft.
Okay. Yes, okay. Thank you so much, Barry. And thanks to you who have followed the program on Facebook, or you have been listening to the program. Those who have been trying to call in, but the network is not helping, you can still share with us next week. Thanks to those who dropped their comments on Facebook. And of course, remember that you can take IATA courses at Fly Ontime Aviation Sciences Academy, which is located next to Mobile Roundabout inside Techno Building. Make sure you visit them there, and they will give you more information about the courses they offer. From me, thank you so much, and we meet next week on another episode of Talk to Aviation Expert.
Fly Ontime Aviation Science Academy presents to you Talk to Aviation Experts radio program.